I would understand it if you lived on this earth before. Maybe that's how you come so close to what I see as alien and wild. Maybe that's how you moved so easily through these worlds, but I don't think that's it. It's something underneath I'd only come to find out later. It'd been our first hangout together, and I asked something maybe too abstract and too soon. You'd say, "Hey, why did the astronomer put bouillon cubes in the shower?" She wanted a meteor shower. The train went by near 11 at night. The rails screeched hell past us while Jenny walked off and stood a few feet away just watching. The engine stirred up a sweet fragrance of clover and honeysuckle that was nestled in the field. Jenny just kept put, unshaken, watching as the train receded in the distance. It's quick to learn that Jenny had a certain fearlessness to the things that try to threaten her. If a little devil come up to her, she'd just shake its bony hand and tell it a joke. "Hey, why can't you hear a pterodactyl in the bathroom?" She'd say the pee was silent, but I couldn't hear much until after the 1,000th thunderous train car left us alone. Only then did we mosey down the tracks. Under a near full moon, covered by wisps of clouds, along the privet and singing tree frogs, we had found ourselves outside of the city in search of water to dip in. The tree frogs, Jenny said, were key. Stop walking when you hear them stop singing. And as their peeping came to a stop, we stopped too. And there, waiting for us, was the most uninviting welcome. There, we'd found an opening in the fence, savagely cut with stray wires jutting out like the worst case of tetanus I'd ever seen. A bad sign maybe, but unwavered, Jenny slid on through. We crept along the deer path deep into the wood's darkness. Plants with knife-like leaves as tall as our chests. We were followed by shadows snapping twigs around us, and up ahead, a pained groaning came from the quarry on the other side of the ridge. I heard only later that there's a car sunk in the quarry somewhere, and I'd seen ghosts of men show up here before, only to give their warnings and then vanish. Something about all that made me believe it when folks said the water in this quarry was toxic. It's some heavy metal that leaks out from the mines that gives the water that enticing blue color. Never mind that. We dived in. Later, sat along the edge of the water, looked up to become reverent specters of the earth's wild heavens, stars of Orion and Virgo, Jupiter, Mars, and the moon all present in the sky. The last time I watched that night sky with Jenny, we had been at Kate's Cove during firefly season. We wandered into the old abandoned church on the right, smashing on the untuned piano keys and listening to the ghosts hum to the reverberations inside, with all them letters to God left out on the podium. Jenny eventually slipped away from the church, too creeped out by the letters and the haunted cemetery. She made her way toward the meadow, where she shouted out for me. I moved too slow, and she shouted again, loud this time. Out in the opening, you could see there were fiery orbs all along the ridge. Looked like ghosts searching for their way back home. For all I knew, they were UFOs, looking for cows to gobble up. I thought we were gonna die, right then and there. And until then, I felt afraid of this world. But with a certain reverence, Jenny watched on and helped me over the fence where we nestled ourselves in the grass like does in a meadow. We locked on until our eyes grew heavy, laid unafraid in our sleeping bags despite the crying coyotes, owls in the near distance. We slept until the rangers found us the next morning. That night was so alien, so near and familiar now. I wondered what woke those fiery ghosts alive. Wondered if reading those letters in the church somehow unearthed them like an incantation. Maybe they knew we were able to hear them. Like witches seancing the dead, they stormed out of their graves in the mountains, as if to say, "Hey, listen, I need your help." You know, a lot of what is on this earth is buried and hidden. Or so I'd like to think. A lot of what's beautiful about us gets buried too, eventually forgotten, huh? We find glimpses of that beauty in letters from friends, maybe diary entries, or just looking back on the past. A few days before all this, Jenny and I spent a morning talking up doing yard work, but mostly sat around looking at the plants with our third cup of coffee in hand. Eventually, at the high of day, we got to it. Got ourselves in a mess of dirt while we scraped brush away from the front of the house. The sweat boiled before stinging our eyes, but we kept at it. Jenny reassured me, saying, "I swear there's a rosebush under all this mess." We cut at the brush like two grown kids searching for a time capsule they buried 15 years prior. An hour went by, or what felt like, and she stood and watched as we got to the last layer. It was like digging up a grave, verifying what once lived there. Jenny looked on in awe, the same way when we saw the ghosts in the mountains, or the hell train by the quarry, as if witness to something in the past, as if something haunting, as if key to how she's evaded her fears. There, behind all the dead brush, under what we thought was once unsalvageable, were the bright red roses. Well, just a couple, but enough to know it was alive and always there. That memory got stalled by a soft breeze along the quarry, and Jenny said, "Hey," like a question, and I perked my head to listen. But she stole the quiet by cracking a good one. "What do you call a cow with no legs?" "Ground beef." And then things got quiet again, and I lost track of time staring up at the sky. It's like a windshield, the night sky. You can watch for hours until your feet get too cold to bear, but it's summer, and the rock that we lay on still emitted its noontime warmth. Just like a long car ride, not staring at the other person, we talked about what people, I thought, just talked about. Childhood, bad relationships we found ourselves in, toast versus cereal. Now frankly, I like a toast from a good homemade bread, but I can see both sides of the table on that one. But anyway, things started getting deeper. We talked about past lives, the one where she was waiting for her husband at sea, the one where she saw demons living in New Orleans, the times on her motorcycle, how she'd like to just keep going. She had so many stories, I started to understand how she believed in past lives. I started to wonder if her stories got all mixed up in there, lost under all that brush, forgetting deep down there's still something alive, beautiful, and blooming. Those fireflies flitted above us. Breaking the silence, she said, "Hey." I half expected another joke about pterodactyls with no legs or cows that pee silently, but when I turned, she continued, "Can I tell you something in a 2-part series?" "You're one of the good ones," she said. "These conversations I rarely have with anyone." It was a bit of a pause. Honeysuckle scuttled along where we lay, and she said, "And don't damn yourself for anyone. Thank you for helping me see and believe that not all the roses are dead."